My phone buzzed against the marble countertop at exactly 7,014 in the morning, and I knew before I picked it up that it was him. He never called this early unless something had gone wrong for him. I let it ring twice while I finished pouring my coffee, then answered with the calm voice I use in board meetings. "Sweetheart, the card got declined at the front desk. They're holding our luggage hostage. Can you call the bank and sort this out, like, right now?" Mom's getting upset. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Through the kitchen window, I could see the magnolia tree my parents planted the year I was born, the one I'd had transplanted to my new house 6 months ago at considerable expense. "Which card, honey?" A pause. The kind of pause people make when they're calculating which lie to tell. "The platinum one. The Chase one. Look, can you just fix it? We're standing in the lobby looking like idiots." "The platinum one I keep in the safe in my closet." Another pause, longer this time. I heard my mother-in-law's voice in the background, sharp and impatient, asking what was taking so long. I heard my husband cover the receiver and mutter something, then he came back on, his voice harder. "Don't make this a thing. Just call the bank. We'll talk when I get home." "Of course," I said. "Have a wonderful trip. Give your mother my love." I hung up. Then I set the phone down very carefully on the counter and I started laughing. I laughed so hard I had to sit down on the kitchen floor, my back against the cabinets, coffee shaking in my hand, because what my husband didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been waiting for this exact morning for almost a year. My name is Adeline Brooks. I'm 34 years old and I'm the chief operating officer of a logistics firm headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. I built this life from absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing. The kind of nothing that means eating ramen 4 nights a week and crying in the bathroom at your second job because your feet hurt so bad you can't feel your toes anymore. I lost both of my parents the summer I turned 19. They were driving home from my cousin's wedding in Asheville when a delivery truck driver who'd been working triple shifts and had falsified his logbook crossed the center line on a curve outside Hickory. They died at the scene. I'd been at home that weekend studying for my organic chemistry final. The settlement money should have been life-changing. It wasn't. My uncle, my father's older brother, was named the executor of the estate. And by the time I figured out what he and my aunt had done, most of it was gone, funneled into a failed restaurant venture and a beach house in the Outer Banks that he sold the next year. I was 20 when the lawyer finally told me there was about $11,000 left, and the legal fight to recover the rest would cost more than I'd ever see back. I signed the papers. I dropped out of pre-med. I worked as a hostess at a steakhouse and as a night shift data entry clerk at a hospital, and I finished my business degree at a state school nobody had heard of. I share this not for pity. I share it because you need to understand that by the time I met my husband when I was 31, I had already survived the worst things a person can survive. I had built my own company with a college friend, a brilliant, soft-spoken man named Whitfield who saw something in me when nobody else did. We grew that little freight brokerage from a 2-person operation in his garage into a regional player with 240 employees and contracts in 11 states. By the time I was 33, I was financially comfortable in a way I had never imagined possible as a kid eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. But I was lonely. God, I was lonely. All my college friends were on their second babies. My sorority little sister had just bought a lake house with her husband. I'd missed my own 20s entirely, and now I was in my 30s realizing I'd built an empire and a beautiful house and absolutely no life inside it. So when Whitfield, over coffee one Tuesday afternoon, gently suggested I try one of those vetted matchmaking services, I let him talk me into it. I met 3 men through that service. The first was nice but boring. The second was clearly looking for an investor. The third was my husband. His name was Tristan Hollander, and he was a regional sales manager for a medical device company. He was tall and easy with himself, the kind of man who could make a waitress laugh without trying. On our second date, he cooked me dinner at his apartment and didn't make a fuss about it, just stood at the stove making chicken piccata while I sat at the counter and told him about my parents. The whole ugly story. Things I hadn't said out loud in years. He listened. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened, and then he said, "I'm so sorry, Adeline. You shouldn't have had to carry all that alone." I cried in his bathroom for 10 minutes before I could come back out. We got married 11 weeks later at the courthouse with 2 witnesses we pulled from the hallway. I know. I can hear you yelling at the screen. Believe me, I've yelled at myself plenty of times since, but in that moment, after spending my entire adult life being responsible and cautious and alone, I wanted to do one impulsive romantic thing. I wanted to belong to somebody. 3 weeks after the wedding, my husband came home from work, sat down on our new sofa, and announced that he was putting in his notice the next morning. He wanted to focus on the household, he said. He wanted to be there for me. He wanted us to start trying for a baby right away, and he didn't think it was right for both of us to be working such long hours. I remember staring at him. I remember this strange feeling in my chest, like a door I hadn't known existed had just slammed shut. I asked him if we could talk about it first, and he laughed and said, "I've been thinking about this for a while. You make plenty for both of us. I want to take care of you for a change." It sounded so generous when he said it. That's the thing about manipulators, the good ones. They wrap the worst things in the prettiest paper. Within a month, he was sleeping until 11 and the house was a disaster. Within 2 months, he was asking me to start sending money to his mother every week, just $2,000 or so, because she was on a fixed income and was struggling. Within 3 months, his mother had moved from outside Atlanta to a condo 15 minutes from our house, and she was over for dinner at least 3 nights a week, criticizing the way I folded towels and asking pointed questions about why I wasn't pregnant yet. The mother-in-law. I have to tell you about the mother-in-law. She was a small, sharp woman who wore a lot of beige and smiled with only her mouth. The first time she met me, she told me in her honeyed southern voice that I had such an interesting face, dear. Very strong features, very career girl. Within a few months, she was openly suggesting I take a step back from work. That perhaps a woman as devoted to her job as I wasn't really suited to be a wife. Her son needed nurturing, she would say. And how was I nurturing him when I was at the office until 7? She brought it up at every dinner. She brought it up in front of my husband, and he would just smile down at his plate and let her talk. I tried. I really tried. I came home earlier. I learned to make her son's favorite casserole. I bit my tongue when she rearranged my pantry to be more efficient, but nothing was ever enough. And meanwhile, the man I had married was disappearing into the couch cushions, watching golf, gaining weight, losing interest in the conversations we used to stay up all night having. Then in March, I found out I was pregnant. I cried in the bathroom at work for an hour. Not happy tears, not entirely. Confused tears. I had wanted a child so badly, but I had wanted that child with the man who'd cook me chicken piccata, not the man who now snapped at me when I asked him to take out the trash. I didn't know what to do. I told him that night. I'd stopped at a bakery on the way home and bought a little pink and blue cupcake set, the kind people post on Instagram. I lit candles. I made the announcement. He looked up from his phone and said, "Oh, wow, okay. That's great, babe." Then he went back to his phone. That was the moment something inside me went very quiet and very still. I cleared the cupcakes off the table. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of our bed in the dark for a long time, and I started, for the first time, to actually pay attention. I started keeping records. Not in the notebook, nothing he could find, in a private cloud folder under a fake name. Bank statements, credit card statements, photos of his mother's fixed income condo, which I'd quietly looked up and learned cost $620,000 and was being paid for, I now realized, with my money. Screenshots of his text messages, which he left open on the kitchen counter constantly because he never imagined I would look. And what I found in those messages, my friends, was an education. He had a girlfriend. Of course he did. A dental hygienist named something I won't repeat because she's not the point of the story. He had been seeing her since before our wedding. His mother knew. His mother had introduced them, in fact, 2 years before he ever met me, and had encouraged the affair to continue because, and I am quoting from a text message I have screenshots of, "Adeline is a meal ticket, baby. You just keep her happy and we'll all be set for life." I read that message standing in my own kitchen at 2 in the morning, and I did not cry. I did not throw the phone. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and I sat down at my dining room table and I started planning. The first thing I did was call Whitfield, not as my business partner, but as the only person on this earth I trusted completely. I drove to his place that Saturday morning and I told him everything, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long minute. Then he said, "Adeline, I want you to listen to me very carefully. We are going to handle this. You are not going to do anything rash, and you are not going to confront him. We are going to be patient, and we are going to be precise. Do you trust me?" I did. I had trusted him with my company for 10 years. I trusted him with this. The second thing I did was hire a divorce attorney, not just any attorney. I hired a woman named Sutton Reeve who was famous in Charlotte for representing the wives of football players. She charged $800 an hour and was worth every penny. I paid her retainer in cash from a savings account my husband didn't know existed, the one I'd opened the week he announced he was quitting his job, because something in me had known, even then. The third thing I did was open a forensic accountant's investigation into every transaction my husband had made on every account he had access to over the previous 10 months. The numbers were worse than I'd expected. He had moved over $91,000 to his mother's accounts. He had charged $43,000 to my credit cards for things I had never seen, including jewelry I had never worn, hotel stays in cities I had never visited, and, charmingly, an engagement ring. The engagement ring was the one that broke me a little. He'd bought another woman an engagement ring with my money. The fourth thing I did was nothing. For 4 months, I did nothing. I went to work. I came home. I let him kiss me on the forehead. I let his mother criticize my hair and my hips and my hostess skills. I made the casserole. I smiled. I started to show. I bought tiny socks and washed them in special detergent and put them in a drawer in the nursery, and I never once let him see me cry. Then one Tuesday in early August, my husband came into the kitchen while I was making breakfast and announced that his parents were taking him on a boys' trip to celebrate his upcoming fatherhood, to Las Vegas, for 5 days. His mother had paid for everything, he said. Isn't that sweet? He'd be back Sunday night. His mother had not paid for anything. I had verified this with our forensic accountant the night before. He had used my platinum card, the one I kept in the safe, the one whose code he had watched me enter at some point and memorized. He had booked the suite, the flights, the spa packages, the show tickets, all of it on my account. Total estimated cost, $19,400. And he was bringing his girlfriend. I had her flight confirmation, booked from his email account in my folder. I kissed him on the cheek and told him to have fun. I waved from the porch as his father pulled out of the driveway in the rental SUV. The moment the car turned the corner, I called Sutton Reeve. "It's go time," I said. What happened over the next 72 hours is something I will remember for the rest of my life. I called the credit card company and reported the platinum card stolen, providing them with the evidence I had been quietly compiling for months. I had every charge made under fraudulent pretenses reversed. I closed every joint account we had and moved the funds to accounts solely in my name, which I was legally entitled to do because, thank God, I had insisted on a prenup and he had signed it without reading because he was so eager to lock me down. As he'd told a friend in a text I also had a screenshot of, I changed the locks on the house, which was titled solely in my name. I had Sutton filed a divorce papers citing adultery and fraud with the supporting documentation that Whitfield's investigator had spent months compiling. I had a process server ready to serve my mother-in-law at the family home in Atlanta the moment my husband landed back in Charlotte, and then I waited. The first call came Friday morning. He sounded annoyed, but not yet panicked. "Hey, the card's not working." "Can you call them? It's been reported stolen, sweetheart. There's nothing I can do about it from here." "What do you mean, stolen?" "Someone took it from my safe and used it without authorization. I had to report it. The bank is investigating." A long silence. Adeline. "Babe, listen, I need to tell you something. I borrowed it, I was going to tell you. Mom thought it would be a nice surprise for me, the trip, but she didn't have the money, so I just... Then you should have asked me, sweetheart. Now you'll have to figure something out. I have to get to a meeting. Love you." I hung up while he was still talking. The second call was 3 hours later, his mother. She started screaming the moment I answered. How dare I embarrass her son? How dare I cancel the card while they were hundreds of miles from home? Did I have any idea what kind of pressure my husband was under? Did I understand that he was building a life with me and I was making it impossible? She told me, and I quote, because I will never forget it, that if I did not reactivate the card immediately, my husband would have no choice but to file for divorce, and a judge would side with him because no court in this country sides with a woman who humiliates her husband publicly. I let her finish. I let her run all the way out of breath. Then I said, very quietly, "Ma'am, you might want to check your front door." She said, "What?" "Your front door. I think someone's there." I timed it perfectly. I heard the doorbell ring through her end of the phone. I heard her tell someone to hold on. I heard her open the door. I heard the process server say, "Mrs. Hollander, you've been served." And I heard her start to wail before the line went dead. The third call came that evening, and this time it was my husband, and he was crying. Adeline, please. Please. I don't know what you've heard, but it isn't what you think. I love you. I love our baby. Please don't do this to me. Please. I had Sutton on a three-way line. He didn't know. Sweetheart, I said, I need you to listen very carefully. Our marriage is over. The papers have been filed. You will receive your copy when you return to Charlotte. You are not to come to the house. The locks have been changed. Your belongings have been packed and are in a storage unit, and you'll receive the access code through your attorney once you've retained one. Adeline, please. I'm not finished. The Las Vegas trip you took with your girlfriend whose name I have, whose flight I paid for, whose hotel room I paid for, has been documented. The $91,000 you moved to your mother's accounts has been documented. The engagement ring you bought her has been documented. My attorney has all of it. So does the IRS, by the way, because your mother appears to have failed to report any of that money as income, and Whitfield felt that was something the appropriate authorities should know about. I heard him make a noise like a wounded animal. Tristan, you have one chance to make this less ugly. If you sign every paper my attorney sends you without contest, if you waive any claim on this house, on the company, on any of my premarital assets, if you agree to the child support schedule we are proposing, then we will not pursue criminal charges for the credit card fraud. That is the only deal you will get. Goodbye. I hung up. He didn't sign. Of course he didn't, because his mother got involved and convinced him I was bluffing. They came back to Charlotte on Sunday night and went straight to my house, expecting to find me hysterical and pliable and ready to be talked back into the marriage. Instead, they found Whitfield sitting on my front porch with two members of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department and a copy of the warrant for my husband's arrest on charges of credit card fraud, identity theft, and wire fraud. The last one because his girlfriend had crossed state lines on his ticket. The look on my mother-in-law's face when she realized that the tall, calm man on my porch was the CEO of the company she'd been telling everyone her son was an executive at, the company she'd bragged about at her bridge club, the company that had just put her son in handcuffs in my front yard, was something I have replayed in my head many times, and it is sweeter every time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The week after the arrest, I delivered my baby. 2 weeks early but healthy, 6 pounds 9 ounces, a daughter with my mother's chin and my father's serious dark eyes. I named her after my mother. I held her in the hospital room with Whitfield sitting beside me, and I cried for the first time in months. He didn't say anything, he just held my hand and let me cry. The divorce was finalized 8 months later. My ex-husband took a plea deal and served 14 months in a minimum security facility outside Raleigh. His mother lost the condo because it turned out she had been making the mortgage payments with money my ex-husband had stolen from me, which made her a recipient of stolen property and then some. The IRS investigation is ongoing. Last I heard, she moved into a one-bedroom apartment in a not-so-nice part of Macon, Georgia, where she lives now with her sister, who I understand does not particularly want her there. She works part-time at a fabric store. My ex-husband, after his release, could not find work in his field because of his record, and the last I heard from my attorney, he was driving for a ride-share app and living with a cousin. He has never met our daughter. He pays child support every month, on time, because the court takes a very dim view of fathers who don't, and Sutton Reeve is the kind of attorney who notices. Whitfield and I are not married. I don't think we ever will be, honestly. After what I've been through, I'm in no hurry to put my name on another piece of paper. But he comes for dinner 3 nights a week. He taught my daughter to walk. She calls him by his first name and runs to the door when she hears his car in the driveway. We are happy in a quiet, careful way that I think is the only kind of happiness people like us, who have been through what we've been through, are actually capable of. I think about that morning sometimes. The one where I sat on the kitchen floor and laughed. I think about how close I came to spending the rest of my life letting that man and his mother bleed me dry. How close I came to teaching my daughter that this was what marriage looked like, that this was what a woman's worth was, an ATM with a wedding ring on it. I think about my own mother, gone almost half my life now, and I wonder what she would say if she could see the life I have now. The house, the daughter, the company, the man who comes to dinner, the peace. I think she would say I did all right. If you're watching this and any part of it sounds familiar, if any part of your life feels like the early chapters of mine, I want you to hear me. You are not stuck. You are not crazy. You are not the problem. The quiet, patient woman who plans is more dangerous than the screaming one, and there is nothing in this world more powerful than a woman who finally decides she has had enough. My name is Adeline Brooks. My daughter is asleep upstairs. My coffee is getting cold, and I have never, not for one single second, regretted canceling that card. I've thought about that morning 1,000 times since. Sitting on my kitchen floor, laughing into my coffee cup, watching the light come through the window of a house I paid for with my own 2 hands, and what I keep coming back to is this. Nothing that happened to Tristan, or to his mother, or to anyone in that family was random. None of it was bad luck. They built every single piece of the cage they ended up living in, and they handed me the key without ever realizing it. Tristan thought I was a meal ticket. He told his girlfriend that in a text message I still have. He thought my kindness was weakness, that my long work hours meant I wasn't paying attention, that my willingness to forgive small things meant I would forgive the big ones. He mistook my patience for stupidity. And I want to be honest with you about something, because I think it matters. For a long time, I let him, because I was lonely and I was tired and I wanted to believe in something so badly that I closed my eyes when the evidence started piling up. That part is on me. I own that. The first lesson I had to learn from this whole mess was that loving yourself enough to look at the truth, even when the truth is ugly, is not cruelty. It is the bare minimum of self-respect. The second thing I learned is that revenge, if you want to call it that, is not loud. It is not screaming matches and broken plates and dramatic confrontations in restaurants. Real consequences are quiet. They are bank statements printed at 3 in the morning. They are phone calls to lawyers. They are a folder in a cloud account nobody else can see. The people who actually win in life are not the ones with the biggest mouths. They are the ones with the longest memories and the steadiest hands. The third thing, and this is the one I want my daughter to know when she is old enough to understand it, is that strength is not something you were born with. It is something you build, slowly, through every small choice you make when nobody is watching. I was not strong because I survived losing my parents. I was strong because every time something broke me, I put myself back together a little bit different. A little bit harder where I needed to be hard. A little bit softer where I could afford to be soft. By the time Tristan and his mother came for me, I had already been built for them. They just couldn't see it yet. If there is anything I want you to take from my story, it is this. Pay attention to your life. Believe people the first time they show you who they are. Save the receipts. Tell the truth to yourself before you tell it to anyone else. And when the time comes to act, do not warn them. Do not threaten. Just do it. The quietest woman in the room is almost always the most dangerous one, and the world has never had enough of us.